Elias's voice cut through the chaos, quiet but unyielding. "I am human." With that he moved. Faster than before, his blade cut through the raider's weapon in a single, perfect arc. Sparks exploded, the sound sharp and final. The leader stumbled back, disbelief frozen on his alien face before collapsing to the ground. The battlefield fell silent. For a long moment, only the crackle of fire and the soft rustle of wind remained. The remaining raiders hesitated, fear finally piercing their arrogance. Elias turned to face them, standing tall amidst the smoke and flames, the light of his blade reflecting in his steady eyes. "Leave," he said, his voice carrying across the field. "This world is not yours." The raiders retreated. Their ships lifted into the night sky, engines whining as they fled the surface. The storm had broken. Humanity had endured. Mara ran to Elias as the last ship vanished beyond the clouds. She reached him just as he fell to one knee, breathing hard, his blade dimming. She caught his arm, helping him stay upright. "Elias, you did it. You saved us." He looked at her with a faint, weary smile. "We saved us, Mara. Every one of us who refused to give in." Tears welled in her eyes. Around them, the fires began to die, leaving behind glowing embers and the scent of scorched earth. Zareth Prime was wounded, but alive. Mara knew this night would never be forgotten. The galaxy would speak of the farmer who stood against an army, who fought not for power, but for the simple, stubborn love of home. And though Elias said nothing more, she could feel it. The quiet pride, the unbroken strength that lived in every human heart. The first light of dawn touched the fields of Zareth Prime, revealing the scars left by the long night. Smoke still rose in thin trails, and the scent of burned wheat mixed with the cool morning air. The once golden fields were blackened in places, yet somehow life still lingered. The soil was warm, alive, refusing to die. Mara stood on the porch of her farmhouse, her eyes tracing the horizon. It felt strange to see the sun again after the chaos of the battle. The world looked different now, quieter but not peaceful. The silence carried memory, echoes of fire, fear, and courage. Elias stood a short distance away, his blade resting in the dirt beside him. His shirt was torn, his hands bruised, but his eyes remained steady. The glow of the weapon had faded, its light replaced by the soft shimmer of morning. He looked like a man who had seen too much, yet carried it with quiet grace. Mara approached him slowly. "You didn't sleep," she said softly. Elias gave a faint smile, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "The land doesn't rest even after the storm." "Neither should we," she sighed. "You're still thinking about them, aren't you?" "The raiders," he nodded. "They'll be back one day. Not the same ones, but others. The galaxy is wide and greed never ends." His voice was calm, but there was something behind it, a heavy understanding that this peace was only temporary. Mara looked down at the burned soil, her voice trembling. "We can rebuild, can't we? The crops, the homes, everything?" "Yes," he said simply. "Because we always do." His words carried quiet strength, and Mara felt her chest tighten. Humanity had always been like that, broken but never defeated, scarred but never crushed. She finally understood what Elias had meant all along. Being human wasn't about power or technology, it was about heart. It was about standing back up when the universe expected you to fall. As the sun climbed higher, the villagers began to gather, faces tired and pale, clothes torn but eyes bright with hope. They looked at Elias differently now. No longer just a farmer, no longer just a quiet man in the background. He was their protector, their reminder of what they could become when courage replaced fear. An old man stepped forward, his voice hoarse but full of gratitude. "Elias Caro, what you did, no one could forget. You saved us." Elias shook his head. "I didn't save anyone alone. Every one of you who stayed, who fought, who believed, this is your victory too." A murmur of agreement spread through the crowd. Some began crying softly, others nodded in silence. The fear that had haunted them for weeks was gone, replaced by something new: pride. Mara watched him as he spoke, her heart swelling with emotion. For years, Elias had hidden his strength behind simple work, behind a farmer's quiet life, but now there was no hiding who he truly was. She wondered how many more like him lived among the stars, humans who looked ordinary, but carried the fire of warriors within. Later, when the crowd dispersed, Mara found Elias standing alone again, looking at the blade buried halfway into the ground. "Will you keep it?" she asked gently. He smiled faintly. No. The blade only matters when it's needed. Peace is what I want to keep, she nodded, understanding. He wasn't a man of war, he was a man of purpose. A protector who fought only because he had to. That was what made him different. That was what made him human. A soft breeze moved through the fields, carrying the scent of ash and new beginnings. The soil was wounded, but beneath it life stirred again. Seeds survived the fire. Mara turned her face toward the rising sun, the light warm against her skin. You think they'll talk about this? Out there, I mean, on other worlds. Elias's voice was quiet, thoughtful. Maybe, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that we remember who we are. And as the morning light washed over them, it was clear. Zareth Prime would rise again, stronger than before. Humanity had shown its heart to the stars, and the stars would not forget. Weeks passed since the battle on Zareth Prime. The burned fields had begun to heal. New sprouts pushed through the blackened soil, small and fragile, yet full of stubborn life. The people worked together, rebuilding fences, repairing homes, and replanting the seeds. Life once again was growing from the ashes. But the story of that night, the night the raiders came and the farmer drew the blade, was already spreading beyond the valley. Traders passing through spoke of it in hushed, reverent tones. Soldiers on distant outposts whispered the tale during quiet nights. The name Elias Caro was no longer just the name of a quiet farmer. It had become something greater, a symbol of human strength and defiance. Mara often found herself standing by the fields, watching Elias work. Despite everything, he had gone back to his simple life. He repaired fences, planted seeds, and fed the animals like nothing extraordinary had happened. But there was a change in him, something deeper in the way he looked at the sky. It wasn't pride, it was peace. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the hills, Mara walked up to him. He was sitting near the old barn, the now dulled blade resting beside him. The weapon's light had faded, but it still held a quiet power, as if remembering the night it had tasted battle. They're calling you a hero, Mara said softly, sitting beside him. The people in the settlements, even the council. Some say you should join the defense forces. Lead them. Elias smiled faintly, eyes still on the horizon. I don't need titles, Mara. I don't need medals or ranks. I just need to know that our people are safe. That's enough for me. She studied him quietly, her heart heavy and full at once. You could have been anything, Elias. A soldier, a commander, maybe even one of those legends they write about in the archives. Why stay here? He turned to her, and for the first time, she saw the depth behind his calm gaze, the weight of memories, battles, and choices. Because legends fade, he said softly. But life must go on. The galaxy needs stories, yes, but it also needs farmers, people who build, grow, and heal. That's what makes us human. Mara's throat tightened. His words carried truth that went beyond the stars. Humanity wasn't powerful because of weapons or fleets. It was powerful because of heart. Because even in the darkest times, humans chose to rebuild, to nurture, to believe in tomorrow. Far above the quiet planet, ships drifted through space. Among the traders and travelers, the tale of Zareth Prime spread faster than light. They called it the Farmer's Stand. Some said it was myth. Others claimed they had seen the glow of the blade themselves. But no matter how it was told, every version carried the same message. Humans might look fragile, might seem ordinary, but when pushed, they were unstoppable. Back on the farm, Elias stood once more in the golden fields as the wind brushed through the new wheat. The planet was healing, and so was he. Mara stood beside him, her eyes soft. Do you think they'll ever come back? She asked quietly. Maybe, he said, looking toward the stars. But if they do, they'll find we're ready. There was no arrogance in his voice, only calm confidence. He reached down and lifted a handful of soil, letting it fall slowly through his fingers. This land, it belongs to the ones who care for it, not the ones who try to take it. Mara smiled faintly. You make it sound simple. He looked at her, his eyes warm. It is simple. That's what they never understand. The wind carried their laughter across the fields, gentle and light. The sky glowed with the colors of sunset, painting the world in gold. The quiet farmer had become a legend. Yet he chose to remain what he had always been, a protector, a builder, a human who refused to surrender. And somewhere far across the stars, among alien empires and distant worlds, A single phrase began to echo whenever humanity was mentioned. Never underestimate a human farmer. Because when one finally drew the blade, the galaxy learned what humanity truly meant. With a sudden roar, the raiders activated their small energy weapons. Blue beams of light shot across the field, burning through wheat and soil. Mara flinched, ducking as the energy sizzled past her. She glanced at Elias. He was still standing, blade flashing, deflecting and redirecting each attack with perfect timing. His calm face betrayed nothing, but his eyes, those dark, steady eyes, burned with intensity. The generator hummed to life under Mara's hands. A protective energy shield surged across the field, creating a barrier between the raiders and the farmhouse. Some of the attackers' weapons bounced harmlessly off the shield. Relief washed over her. Together they could fight back. Together they could survive. Elias moved closer to the lead raider, a towering figure in black armor who had begun coordinating the attack. Mara's heart leapt as she saw Elias's blade connect, sending sparks flying as it struck the alien weapon. The raider faltered, surprise breaking the cold precision in its movements. "You're not invincible," Elias said quietly, almost to himself, almost like a warning. And yet it carried power, weight, and the certainty that he meant every word. Mara felt tears sting her eyes. The man she had thought she knew, the simple farmer she had always admired from afar, was more than anyone could imagine. He was humanity embodied, unyielding, fearless, and unstoppable when protecting what mattered. The raiders began to retreat, but Elias did not chase. He stood tall, blade glowing faintly under the starlight. Every breath controlled, every movement deliberate. He had sent a message. Zareth Prime was defended, and no enemy would underestimate humanity again. As silence fell over the fields, broken only by the distant hum of retreating ships, Mara ran to him. She could barely speak, her voice trembling with a mix of relief and awe. "Elias, you're incredible. I had no idea." He looked down at her, the first faint smile breaking through the tension.
"You did not need to know," he said softly.
"You only need to remember this. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. That is what makes us strong." Mara nodded, understanding more in that moment than she ever had. Humanity was not weak, and Elias was a living testament to what that strength meant. The first clash was over, but Mara knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy would hear about Zareth Prime, about the quiet farmer who drew the blade, and about the courage that refused to bend. The night on Zareth Prime felt alive, every rustle of wheat and whisper of wind carrying the echo of the first clash. Elias stood at the edge of the field, the glow of his blade faint in the moonlight. His chest rose and fell steadily, calm but ready. Mara stayed close, heart still racing, knowing this battle was far from over. Far above, the raider ships circled, dark shapes against the starlit sky. They had underestimated the humans of Zareth Prime, and now they returned with more firepower, more numbers, and a cold, calculated fury. Mara saw them through the haze of distance, their lights flickering like predators waiting to strike. "They're coming back," Mara whispered, her voice trembling. Elias's eyes did not leave the horizon. "And we will be ready. Fear is for those who do not fight for what they love." "We do." Mara wanted to ask how, but she already knew. Elias's confidence was not empty. It was forged from years of unseen training, a life hidden beneath the quiet facade of farming. Every swing of his blade in the last battle had been deliberate, controlled, and deadly. He was not just defending land, he was defending hope, humanity, and the lives of every person who had ever thought themselves ordinary. The raiders descended again, this time in larger numbers. Their foot soldiers spilled from landing craft, sleek and armored, weapons glowing ominously. Elias moved first, his blade a streak of silver in the dark. He met the lead raider, and for a moment the world seemed to slow. Every motion, every swing, every step was precise, almost beautiful. It was clear now that he had faced far worse than farm disputes, far more deadly than storms or wild animals. Mara's fear pressed down on her, but she refused to run. She followed Elias, helping to direct the farm's emergency defenses. She activated small energy barriers, guided injured animals to safe pens, and moved fallen crates to create obstacles for the raiders. Every action she took was small, but together with Elias, it formed a web of resistance that the raiders had not anticipated. The fight became chaotic. Sparks flew as blades met alien weapons. Energy beams cut through the air, slicing wheat and dirt, but Elias did not falter. With every strike, he forced the raiders back, his movements unrelenting, his resolve unwavering. Mara could see it now, the raw truth of what humanity was capable of. Strength wasn't just physical. It was courage, heart, and the refusal to give in. One raider, larger and more imposing than the rest, charged toward Elias with a weapon designed to crush bones and armor alike. Elias did not flinch. With a fluid motion, he parried, sidestepped, and countered, sending the attacker sprawling into the field. Mara gasped. She had never imagined a human could move like that, could think like that in the heat of battle. It was not just skill. It was instinct, experience, and sheer determination. The other raiders faltered, confusion creeping into their ranks. Mara realized the truth. These humans were not helpless, not weak, not ordinary. Elias was a living testament to that. And humanity's strength was not in weapons alone. It was in heart, courage, and the refusal to surrender. Elias glanced at Mara, his eyes meeting hers for a brief, fleeting moment. "Stay close," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "We fight together, we protect together, and we will not fail." Mara nodded, understanding the weight of his words. She felt pride swell in her chest, not just for Elias, but for the people of Zareth Prime, for humanity itself. They were ordinary in the eyes of the galaxy, perhaps, but they were far stronger than anyone imagined. As the raiders regrouped and their ships loomed closer, Elias stood tall amidst the chaos, his blade reflecting the starlight. Every swing was precise, every movement deliberate, and every breath a promise. Humanity would not bow, would not break, and would never be underestimated. The counterattack was fierce, but the resolve of one man and the courage of those who stood behind him was fiercer. The raiders began to retreat once more, forced to recognize that the farmers of Zareth Prime were far from ordinary. And Mara knew, deep in her heart, that the night had changed forever. Elias was no longer just a farmer. He was a force, a protector, a living symbol of what humanity could achieve when pushed to the edge. The galaxy would soon learn a hard truth. Never underestimate the quiet ones, for they may hold the fiercest strength of all. The sky above Zareth Prime burned red with the light of approaching ships. The raiders were no longer testing the defenses. They were coming with full force now. Dozens of dark crafts descended through the clouds, their engines roaring like thunder, shaking the quiet farming valley to its core. Mara stood beside Elias at the edge of the wheat field. The air smelled of smoke and ozone, thick with fear, yet Elias remained still, his expression calm, his hand resting on the hilt of his glowing blade. To him, fear was useless. Only resolve mattered now. "They're bringing everything they have," Mara said, her voice trembling. Elias nodded slowly. "Good, then we end it here." The words made her chest tighten. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the sweat on his brow, but there was also something deeper, unshakable determination. He wasn't fighting for glory or revenge. He was fighting for home, for her, for everyone who believed peace was possible on this quiet planet. The first blasts came like a storm. Explosions lit up the night, scattering dirt and fire across the fields. Mara ducked behind a fallen beam, shielding herself from the heat. The raiders' ground troops moved in formation, their black armor glinting in the red glow. Their leader, tall and monstrous in appearance, stepped forward with a weapon that pulsed with blue light. Elias stepped forward to meet him. The two figures faced each other in the burning field, the soft golden wheat now a sea of fire around them. For a moment, everything fell silent, the wind, the ships, even Mara's pounding heart. "You fight well for a farmer," the raider leader sneered, voice distorted through his helmet. Elias gave a small, tired smile. "That's because I'm not just a farmer." The leader raised his weapon and fired. The beam struck, but Elias was already moving. His blade flashed, cutting through the air in a line of blinding light. The beam split, scattering harmlessly to the sides. With a fluid motion, Elias closed the distance, striking with precision born of countless unseen battles. Sparks flew as their weapons met again and again, each strike echoing like thunder. Mara watched in awe, her fear giving way to pride. The man she had thought ordinary was now a beacon of defiance, his movements graceful and deadly. Every step, every swing carried the weight of his conviction. But the raider leader was powerful. He struck back with savage strength, his blows shaking the ground. Elias staggered once, dropping to one knee, his blade digging into the soil to steady himself. Mara's heart froze. She wanted to run to him to help, but something in his eyes stopped her. He wasn't finished. The raider laughed, raising his weapon for the final blow. "You are nothing!" The sun hung low over the golden fields of Zareth Prime, painting the soft hills with long, warm shadows. Marlene wiped her brow and paused to watch the wheat sway in the evening breeze. The harvest season was almost over, and every stalk, every bend of the land felt like part of her life. She loved the farm, loved the simple rhythm of work and quiet evenings under the stars. Her neighbor, Elias Caro, was a man people thought they knew. He was quiet, steady, and unassuming. Most called him just a farmer. His hands were rough from years of tilling soil and repairing fences, his clothes worn and patched. He spoke little, but when he did, people listened. There was calmness in his gaze, a patience that drew trust without explanation. Mara had known Elias since they were children. She remembered him laughing by the creek, helping neighbors, and sometimes staring far off into the horizon as if seeing something nobody else could. She had often wondered about those moments, but no one ever asked him. And he never explained. He was just Elias, the quiet man who always seemed unshakable. Tonight, something in the air felt different. The wind was sharper, carrying a faint hum that made her skin tingle. Rumors of raiders had reached their small community, mercenaries who attacked colonies without warning, leaving nothing but fear behind. The council warned everyone to be careful, but farmers like Mara and Elias kept to their work, believing they could weather anything. She walked across the field, her boots crunching softly on dry soil, and found Elias lifting a heavy crate of wheat. His movements were steady, precise, almost calm in a way that seemed impossible under the shadow of danger. "Elias," she said softly, careful not to startle him, "do you think the stories are true? About the raiders?" He paused, setting the crate down with deliberate care. His eyes, dark and steady, turned toward the horizon. "Stories are just words," he said slowly. "But if danger comes, we face it." "Like always." Mara frowned, unsettled. "You make it sound simple. It doesn't feel simple." Elias offered a faint smile, a shadow of something hidden behind his calm demeanor. "It is simple. We survive. We protect what matters." The words should have comforted her. Instead, they made her uneasy. There was a quiet certainty in his voice, a strength she hadn't noticed before, but she shook the thought away. Elias was a farmer like the rest of them. That was all he was. As the sun sank behind the hills, Mara returned to her small home. She paused to glance back at Elias, still working in the dim light. Unseen by her, a distant hum carried across the hills. Metal ships, dark and silent, moving closer to Zareth Prime. Raiders, experts in destruction, were approaching the planet. Their intent was clear: take everything by force. Yet in the calm, simple life of the farmers, there was an unspoken truth. Not everything was as it seemed. Elias, the quiet man who had tended this land for years, carried a secret skill and a strength that few could imagine. The night settled over the farm, deep blue and silent. Stars sparkled above, indifferent to the worries below. Mara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air. Something waited beyond the hills, something that would test them all. And when the time came, when the raiders revealed themselves, Elias would show the universe what it meant when a man who seemed ordinary drew the blade. Night had fully settled over Zareth Prime, wrapping the fields in deep blue darkness. The stars shimmered cold and distant, and the wind whispered through the wheat like a warning. Marlene sat by her doorway, listening to the soft rustle of the crops, trying to convince herself that the rumors of raiders were just that, rumors. But a strange tension clung to the air, prickling her skin. In the distance, beyond the hills that framed the valley, faint red glows flickered. They were too regular, too precise to be natural. Mara's heart thumped painfully. Her thoughts immediately went to Elias. He had been quiet all day, but there had always been a strength about him, a quiet presence that made danger feel almost tangible. She hurried across the field toward his farmhouse, her boots crunching on dry soil. When she reached him, Elias was already outside, leaning on the edge of the barn roof, eyes scanning the horizon. The red lights reflected in his eyes, but his face remained calm, almost unreadable. "They're here," Mara whispered. more to herself than to him. Elias didn't flinch. Instead, he straightened, his posture solid and grounded. "Yes," he said softly, "and they think we are weak. They don't know what lives here." Mara looked at him, startled. "What do you mean?" "We're just farmers." His gaze did not leave the distant horizon. "We survive, Mara. That means more than tilling soil. It means protecting this land. Protecting people who cannot protect themselves." Before she could respond, the first ships broke through the darkness. Sleek and black, they hovered silently above the fields, their engines humming like predators in the night. Mara froze as shadows moved along the hulls. Raiders had come. Their intent was clear: take, destroy, leave nothing behind. Panic rose in her chest. She wanted to run, to hide, but her legs felt heavy. She looked at Elias, expecting fear, hesitation, anything, but he simply reached for a long case by the barn. "You don't understand," he said, almost casually, as if he were talking about fixing a fence. "This is not just a farm. It is our home, and I will not let it fall." Mara's heart skipped a beat when he opened the case. Inside lay a blade, unlike anything she had seen before. It shimmered with energy, faint lines of light running along its length. It wasn't a farming tool. It wasn't a toy. It was a weapon, ancient and deadly, designed to cut through more than metal. It could cut fear itself. Elias stepped forward, holding the blade with quiet certainty. The red glows from the ships reflected in its edge. Mara felt both awe and terror. The man she had known her whole life, quiet, simple Elias, was about to show the world that farmers were not helpless. The raiders descended, their small assault craft skimming the ground. Their weapons opened fire, cutting through wheat and soil. But Elias moved like the wind, faster than her eyes could follow. He deflected the first strikes, then the second, each movement precise, practiced, and deadly. Every swing of the blade carved a path through the night, a warning and a promise. Mara could only watch, her heart pounding. She realized now that she had never truly known him. All those years of quiet strength, of watching horizons, had been preparation. Elias was not a simple man. He was a protector, a warrior forged for moments like this. As the raiders faltered, confused by the unexpected resistance, Elias stood tall amidst the chaos, his blade gleaming in the dim light. The wheat swayed around him, but he was unshaken, unyielding. Mara felt a strange mixture of fear and pride. This was the man she had always known, and yet someone far greater. The night had shifted. The raiders were no longer invincible, and Mara understood, with a clarity that made her heart ache, that the quiet farmer she had known had become the guardian of Zareth Prime. The night air was thick with tension. Sparks flew as Elias's blade clashed against the raiders' weapons, the hum of alien engines and the crackle of energy filling the darkness. Mara's heart pounded in her chest, a mix of fear and awe. She had never seen anything like this. Her quiet neighbor, the man she thought she knew, moved with a skill that was almost otherworldly. Every strike was precise, every movement calculated. The raiders were ruthless, their ships designed to crush colonies in moments. They did not expect resistance. They did not expect Elias Caro. Their confidence faltered as they realized their simple attack was meeting something far greater. The farmer they had dismissed was a storm on the battlefield. Mara ran across the field, her eyes wide, trying to find a place to help or hide. She didn't know how she could contribute, but she couldn't just stand there. She spotted a small generator nearby, powering the farm's defenses. If she could activate the energy fields, maybe she could give Elias a chance to strike harder. Heart racing, she sprinted toward it, the wheat brushing against her legs as if warning her to slow down. Elias's voice carried over the chaos, calm but commanding.
"Stay low, Mara."
"Do not get caught." She ducked behind a haystack, fumbling with the generator controls. Sparks danced across the console as she worked, her hands trembling. The raiders' foot soldiers began to approach, their armor sleek and dark. They moved like predators, confident that they would overwhelm any resistance. But Elias met them at the edge of the field, his blade cutting through the night with a rhythm that seemed almost musical. Each strike sent raiders tumbling, disarmed or fleeing in confusion. Mara watched, her breath catching. This was not just skill. It was mastery. Elias wasn't just defending himself. He was defending every life, every piece of land, every hope tied to this farm. The emotion in his movements spoke louder than words ever could. It was love for his home, courage that refused to bend, and a quiet fury that burned brighter than any fire.